Hi, how's it going? I'll get started in just a second. Welcome to my live stream. Just want to look at my phone here real quick and see if it's actually working. Everybody doing okay today? Did you go to church today? Did you get your sermon? I just want to let you know that contrary to what the pastor at the church I go to with my family, contrary to what he is saying today in his sermon, it's okay to rest. Okay, look, we're working. Good deal. Close that. All right, cool. Yeah, quick and dirty live stream here. Yeah, it's okay to rest. You don't have to always be on, and sometimes trauma is responsible for you being hamstrung in life, and it's okay to acknowledge that. That's not a deal breaker. You can still be a valuable, worthy person with a lot to offer, and you don't always have to be on, just moving and going and being productive and all these things 24/7. You know, you can play video games, watch junk on TV, and enjoy your life too. So we are not puritanical psychos anymore. We're moving past that. Okay. So um, I have been going to AA now, and I have a sponsor for almost 2 months. Prior to that, I was using alcohol and those edibles you get at the gas station to cope with life, and I can go into that some more later on. But I've been reading through the big book with my sponsor, and we've been going over some of the principles and ideas in there. And I have to tell you, whew, sorry, I'm going to take this hoodie off real quick. I have to tell you that the big book of AA is actually quite a profound work of spiritual literature. And this is coming from someone who's pretty studied in the world of comparative religion and spiritual literature. And here you have this book. Here, I have it right here. See, been reading it. Written by a group of alcoholics in the early mid 20th century, out of Akron, Ohio, and I have to say it's right up there with some of the classics of spiritual literature. I don't know if I put it on the same level as the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible or something in terms of its popularity and its impact on the world, but it doesn't have a lot of the unfortunate baggage that those books have, and the spiritual principles in here are really good. Plus, because if you're watching me, most likely an American or somebody influenced by American culture, the plain English in this book will probably make more sense to you than some of those other holy books that people read. Not to call this a holy book. Some people read it that way. I wouldn't call it a holy book. I just think that these are guys who had their egos, their flesh humbled by the experience of life, and it gave them some spiritual insights that are valuable. So yeah, I think it's worth taking a look at, even if you're not an alcoholic, and I'll get into that a little bit here. Chapter 5 from this book talks about how these principles and the spiritual malady that alcoholics suffer from, people who are not alcoholics are also afflicted by it. And he talks about, anyway, I'll get into that too. So, welcome. My name is Sam Bolton. I'm here to talk about things that interest me. I have a lifelong of study. I'm a former evangelical Christian, former traditional Catholic. I've looked into every conspiracy theory under the sun. I love philosophy. I have a bachelor's in history, a master's in theology, and I've got quite a few varied and interesting interests that I want to share with you. I've been married for 17 years, and I adopted 3 girls from the foster care system, and so I am a trauma-informed adoptive parent. So I like to talk about trauma and parenting as well. So yeah, I think that among other topics we'll be getting into. So if you like those sorts of things, if you like varied interests, I was watching Dan Coe a little bit earlier, talking about how niching down for an online personality is not always the best thing. In fact, you are the most profitable niche, your experience. And I'm 40 now. I'm over 40, so I am a source of wisdom for younger people, hopefully. Not to be too egotistical there. So, yes, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here it is. It's not that big, my copy, but I got this off Amazon. It's a smaller version, fits in the back pocket of your jeans. My objective of this video is to go over chapter 5 of the big book, which I read today, and share some of the ideas and insights that I had while reading it. It's significant even for people who aren't alcoholics, like I explained. Just really anyone who's struggling with not living their life day by day and letting their ego, their flesh, their animalistic, beastie side control their life, right? If you're having trouble taking the reins of your life and letting your higher self, that spark of divinity within, the rational mind, control and captain your life, then this chapter and this book is very helpful to you. So, I have a personal connection with this chapter because really I've had some insights over the last several years, and really as I was reading this today, I realized that this is what my father was trying to teach me in his own way when he was raising me in evangelical Christianity. He would always bang on and on about Paul and his teaching about dying to flesh and buffeting the flesh and daily having to take control and take the reins. And I think the language is a little bit strong. I don't think you can really kill your flesh. It's going to be with you until your whole body dies. But really taming and breaking the flesh, the ego, the animalistic side of you, the beast within. This is what he's talking about, and this is what my father was really trying to drive home in me as a child. And then, as I became a parent, I realized that this is the case. You know, we have these disparate parts of ourselves, and one of the most profound parts of ourselves, one of the most impactful parts of ourselves, is that ego, the animalistic side, the side of us that is a monkey, is an ape. Actually, humans are scientifically one of the great apes because we can reach our arms up like this, right? So that great ape side of us that is driven by a desire for lust and blood and food, and we just want to eat, fucking kill, right? That's what the ape wants to do. And so many people are living with that ape in charge, and the idea is to not to kill the ape, but to tame it, to break the ape, because reason rides the passions of the ape. That's like a mashup of Planet of the Apes and Passion of the Christ. The passions of the ape are not healthy if you let them run the show. They can be harnessed in healthy ways, like a horse pulling a carriage. You couldn't just let the horse run the show. It needs a rider in the seat to, guide the horse where to go, using the horse's natural strength and speed to get some more productive, right? So that's what we need to learn how to do, and that's what I think this chapter is talking about. And that's why it connects with me personally. Have you ever felt like the ego is running your life? And how do you connect with something greater than yourself, right? This is what I want to ask in this video. And if you have some thoughts or ideas about that, just share them in the comments there. Let's see if anybody's chatting. Probably not, but we'll see. All right, I got one concurrent viewer. It's probably me on my smartphone, but that's okay. We got to start somewhere, right? Okay. So, the big book describes what they call the spiritual malady, or the self-centered part of ourselves. This is the animal self. That's how I describe it, or the ego. It's a very reactive, very easily angered, very prone to fear part of us. But it can also be very intelligent and smart, and it can trick us into thinking that it is actually not the ego, the great ape, the angry, childish, immature ape that's just looking to prolong its life as long as possible and accrue as much wealth and things and get as much punani as it can. It's actually this higher part of ourselves that is concerned about justice and truth and honor and dignity and integrity. It can trick us because the ape is very intelligent, okay? It's evolved for millions of years. It's very intelligent. It can trick us into thinking that it is not the animalistic part of us. It's actually the higher part of us. So it's a tricky little thing. So, like I said before, religious traditions like Christianity talk about dying to self, killing the flesh. Eastern religions talk about diminishing the ego. And this is what Alcoholics Anonymous is teaching us to do too. We have to diminish that part of ourselves. Really, I wouldn't say kill it. I would say humble it. Humble it. And this is what trauma is about. This is what the rites of passage I was talking about in the last live stream are about. It's about humbling the ego, humbling that part of ourselves, so that it gets a taste of its own mortality, and it becomes humbled and allows that deep inner divine spark that's a part of all of us deep within to take control of our lives and to run things, because that's the part of us that's connected to God, the power greater than ourselves, right? That's the part of us that knows how to be at peace and be okay when not everything goes right, because this life is not the end. If to the ego, if something goes wrong in this life, it's the end of the world, and you start resenting your parents because they raised you a certain way. You start resenting your partner because they're not the type of partner you thought you wanted. You start resenting your kids for destroying your ability to be a rock star, or to start that restaurant you wanted to start. You start resenting that guy who made fun of you in high school because it gave you a complex, right? And it feels like it's the end because this life is so short. So to the ego, to the great ape, those are big deals. But to the part of us deep within that's connected to the divine above, it's not that big of a deal, because this isn't the end. That's an eternal, immortal aspect of ourselves, right? So the trick is getting in touch with that. Uh, and like I talked about last time, rites of passage, they put us through these ordeals to humble the ego. Those taking hallucinogenic drugs, fighting that tiger with the knife. This is going to humble the animal self, and it kills the boy so the man can emerge. Right. This is something that we don't really do on purpose. It happens to some people in our culture, but we don't recognize it as a thing that must happen to everyone, and we don't really do it on purpose. And so many of us are just out there languishing around, letting the great ape, the beast, run our lives into ruin, into death, into addiction, into disease, And it's really a shame, because if you can get past that and frankly grow up, diminish that animal part of you, not let it run things anymore, then you can start to become this this higher being. You're connected with the divine from that spark within, and you can start to be a benefit to your community and your family and yourself, and live a productive life. And you focus on things that actually matter, because again, I'm not a conservative Christian. I'm not a Christian anymore, but there are jewels and nuggets of wisdom in Scripture. You start storing up for yourself the things above instead of storing up treasures from here below. Not that there's anything wrong with making money and all these things, but you get much more fulfillment if you live a life that's committed to honor and honesty and truth and goodness than you do just trying to pile up a bunch of gold and women and which is what the ego likes to do. So, what are some ways that you've learned to recognize when your ego is in control? What are some ways that you do? Yeah, and like I said, the ego will often masquerade like it's this rational part of us, like it's a logical being, but you have to, say that and men do this a lot, I've noticed. I can't speak for women. I'm not a woman. I'm actually a man. And men do this a lot, where we will think that we're these hyper-rational beings, but and we'll get into arguments about politics, or try to be right about politics or religion, or we'll start hoarding wealth out of fear of scarcity, and we think we're being super rational. But if you look at the core of what's motivating you to behave this way, it's anger, it's fear of death, it's resentment, it's a desire to be superior and to be the alpha in a situation. And these are not the motivations of the they're not rational motivations, really, because you're going to die one day. It doesn't matter. These things are just dust and vapor. These are the motivations of the childish ape, and it's a sign that your ego is still in charge. And so the big book talks about this, if you're living this way, if you're being radically selfish, you can be a jerk, sure, but you can also seem like you're really nice and really helpful. But if you're motivated by selfish desires, then it's a sign that your ego is still in control. And the chances, especially for an alcoholic, that you get sucked back into a life of self-destruction are much greater. You still haven't made that connection with God, with the divine, So what's some way you can get past this? Okay, so you can hit rock bottom like so many druggies and drug users and alcoholics do. That's one way you can really humble your ego. And for many who don't go through a rite of passage experience because they live in America or someplace else like that, that becomes our rite of passage experience. Okay, you hit that rock bottom, and You cannot deny anymore that you are not capable within your animal self of running your life in a way that is productive or healthy. And you're destroying yourself, and you're destroying your family and your relationships because you're letting that selfish part of you run the show. That's rock bottom. Whether you end up in the gutter or have a panic attack and scare everyone or something in between. Okay, that becomes our de facto rite of passage, and it's very unfortunate. But that's when you realize you need to open up, stop living in fear, humble yourself, humble your flesh, and allow God to take control and to trust that even when things seem to be dire, even when things seem to be precarious, you can trust that that immortal part of you that lives past bodily death, is connected to the divine, and you can trust that. And that's when you start to be a blessing to those around you, and that's when you start to live a life of service. Okay. And how do you do this without hitting rock bottom, though? For those of you who are not on that path, who maybe aren't an alcoholic or a drug user, but you still want to have that spiritual awakening, this is why you need to keep up practices, regular practices daily, if possible, like prayer and meditation, learning how to quiet down the ego mind, the mind that's constantly chattering and worrying and full of anxiety about so and so said this, or I got to pay this bill, or da da da. All the things, like as soon as you wake up, you start thinking about all the things you have to do that day, da 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 da. Or when you're going to bed, you can't stop thinking about all the things that people said that day or the events of the day, and what they really mean and what somebody's hidden motivation was. And this is all the chattering of the ego mind. And when you can't shut that part of your mind up, you can't listen for the deeper inner voice that's connected to the divine. You can't hear it. So this is why prayer and meditation is so important, because what you're actually doing is you're training yourself. You're training your ego to shut up, and you're teaching it to shh, go sit over there. Thank you very much. Because really, this is a childish, immature part of yourself, okay? Who is more prone to resentment and prone to anger when it doesn't get its way than a child? Okay, this is a part of you that is stuck in childhood. This is a part of you that hasn't grown up yet. So what do you do to a child that won't shut the hell up? That's being annoying. You can't focus on what's important because the child won't be quiet. Well, if you're a good parent and you're trauma informed, you make sure that child feels loved and appreciated and accepted, but you firmly and calmly tell the child they must stop speaking so you can focus on something important. I love you very much. You're a part here. You're not rejected here, but I need you to go find something quiet to do because I have something adult and important to focus on. This is what prayer and meditation is about. This is the point. Okay, so this is how you can wake up and have that divine connection, have that spiritual awakening that the big book is teaching you is the key to getting past addiction and alcoholism, which it's not just for alcoholics, it's for everyone. This is a common human condition, right? We're all addicted to something. We all have our hang-ups and our traumas that we haven't gotten over. It's having that spiritual awakening through regular prayer, meditation, and other practices too that maybe resonate for you. But it's about making connecting with the divine within a priority and letting that part of you guide and lead your life. Okay, this is the key. This is the answer to living a life of fulfillment. Have you ever caught yourself justifying actions that deep down you knew were driven by fear or selfishness? Okay, this is the ego mind tricking you. This is the great ape tricking you. And one thing I really appreciate about the big book is, yes, it was written in the early to mid 20th century in America, so there is a lot of traditional Protestant Christianity language woven into this, and I understand that there was even more when the book was originally composed, but it went through some edits so it could have a wider appeal. But they describe God as the good, the one, right? This power greater than ourselves that is really an unknowable mystery at the end of the day. And it reminds me again of Neoplatonism and Plotinus and the way that they describe God, okay? So the one, God is the foundation of all existence. God is a power greater than ourselves. And the duality of soul in Neoplatonism, the higher self versus the lower self, the part of us within that's connected to God versus the beast, the ape, is very similar to what's found in the big book. So this is another reason why it resonates with me, because I find Neoplatonism to be very close to the truth, and it seems to be what's being discussed and taught in here as well. So once you realize that God is not an external paternalistic king or emperor somewhere outside of you, handing down judgments and rules and punishments and sending your friends and family to hell for not believing the right thing or being gay or something. Once you realize that that's mythology, it's meant to scare children into behaving in a way that their parents find less obnoxious, or maybe to keep them from being self-destructive. And hey, look, parents raising kids is really hard work. So I'm not trying to be overly, I'm not trying to be overly critical of traditional parenting, because I understand it's very difficult. Okay. But we need to understand that this external paternalistic God is not, it's not the reality. Okay. God is all loving, and God is found deep within. God is not outside of you. The kingdom of God is within. So once I had this connection, this understanding of God as both transcendent but also immanent, a force within us and also beyond us, this is when I had that light bulb moment, right? And I started to grow up, I'd say, and get past this ego self, right? So does this idea of God as an ineffable source resonate with you? And let me know in the comments how you think of God as a higher power. Or do you? Maybe you think of him a different way. So, as I mentioned, the big book is for alcoholics, but it goes beyond alcoholism. This is for everyone. That talks about a spiritual malady on pages 61 and 62, especially. It talks about how the living life in an egotistical way can be seen in the retiree in Florida talking about the state of the country, or the politician lamenting that the world is in a utopia, or pastors that are angry about social changes, basically making the point that the spiritual malady that causes alcoholics to spiral into addiction is a universal human trait, right? It's just alcoholics have a much more acute case of it, right? So, and the classic hallmark trait of the alcoholic, of the human that is being ruled by their ego, is resentment. Okay. And I went through a list of possible resentments that you might be experiencing. If you're hung up on those things, if you're constantly focused on resenting other people, that's a good sign that you are letting your ego run your life, and you're probably on a path to self-destruction. So let's figure out a way to get past that. And they do offer up some methods here. You can take pen to paper and write down the people you are resentful of, right? And you can then write down why you're resentful of them, and then you can talk about how it affects, how it affects you. But we usually comes up with a list of resentments that come back to loss of control, to fear of some kind, and these are all ego motivations, right? When you wake up to that connection to the divine, you realize you don't need to fear death and loss of control anymore, because death is inevitable and you never really have control anyway. So there's no point in being resentful of people who you think did something to reduce that in you. Oh, here we go. Let me fix this here. So yes, resentment and anger. These are the hallmarks of living an ego-driven life. So how has resentment shown up in your life? Hmm? And what helps you let go of it? What practices do you do that help you let go of it? I'd like to know. Please tell me. So, practical steps for spiritual growth. Emphasize that I would like to emphasize that spiritual growth requires the humbling of the ego. You can't kill the ego. The ego is going to be with you, and the ego serves a purpose. Okay, it's here to make sure you don't walk off a cliff into the ocean. It's here to help you understand, to give you instincts for self-preservation and for procreation and for eating enough food. Okay, if you were constantly only concerned about the things above, and had zero focus on the things of the earth, like your ego is completely dead, then you probably starve to death on a street corner, which some spiritual people do. Apparently, you can go to India and meet people like that, yogis, and there's some Greek philosophers even that seem to live that way. Okay, but the ego serves the purpose so that you can you can get around in the world. You can live a normal human life in a way, but again, you have to channel those ego instincts into a productive life and let your higher self run the show. Okay. But yes, you have to humble the ego and create space for your higher self or your spirit to lead your life. So that involves possibly daily meditation or prayer to quiet your mind and connect with the spirit. Journaling is another great way. You probably heard of automatic writing. Some people do this and they think that they are channeling angels or higher beings as they write with a pen and paper. And yeah, I'm not saying I know what's going on there for sure, but I would posit that maybe what you're doing is connecting with that divine part of you that's beyond your ego, quieting the ego mind, and letting that divine part of you within communicate with you in a way that's unique and that's novel. Perhaps that's what's going on. You could try that. Journaling is a great way. And then daily practicing gratitude. One good thing that the pastor at the church I went to today said the first thing he wants to do when he wakes up in the morning is humble himself and then make sure gratitude is filling his mouth before anything else. Okay? Your mouth is very powerful. The words that you speak are very powerful for you and for your mindset and for how you live your life. It's in a lot of ways it's kind of like casting a magic spell when you speak things out loud. And obviously, it's not like Harry Potter, but it causes changes in your subconscious mind, and it causes changes in the way you think about the world. So, if you're constantly being thankful and gracious with your mouth and the way that you think, you're going to see positive changes in your life, and you're going to increase that connection to the divine, to God within. And conversely, if you do the opposite and you're always negative and complaining and saying awful things about people, then it's going to diminish that divine part of you and bolster your ego. And that's not what you want. You want the opposite. Okay. So, yes, practice gratitude and shift your focus away from ego driven dissatisfaction. Okay. And maybe you can tell me in the comments some other practices that you know of that help you connect to something greater than yourself. So, recapping this live stream, let me know what you think in the comments. There's a tension in our lives between the ego and the higher self. Most people are living their lives ego based, and the key to spiritual growth is diminishing and humbling the ego and then going within to find that divine connection. Okay. And that's what growing up and becoming an adult is all about. You have to kill the boy to let the man emerge. Okay. And then, of course, the parallels that I found in Chapter 5 of the Big Book, one of the great spiritual works of the 20th century out of Akron, Ohio. The parallels to the way they describe God in Chapter 5 to the concepts of God you will find with Neoplatonism and Plotinus as their concept of the one. Okay? So, yeah, this chapter has been very eye-opening to me, and it's cemented a lot of personal spiritual revelations I've had over the last couple of years, and learning how to be a father and a better husband, and grieving the loss of my father as well in the last 5 years. I've had a lot of spiritual growth, and I feel that the way God and spirituality is described in this chapter really resonates with what I've learned. So I would go get a copy of this and take a look. You can find a free PDF online. Maybe I'll link it below. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested in spiritual growth, this is a must read. If you're struggling with addiction and alcoholism, definitely get this book and read it, and go to a meeting and get a sponsor so you can get clean, because your life starts when you get sober. Okay. So yeah, if you found value in what I had to share, I'm going to continue doing videos as often as I can about things that interest me, and try to inspire, try to share wisdom and knowledge that I've gathered over the years, and help you on a path to a fulfilling, thoughtful, meaningful life that is healthy and hopefully sober. But yeah, if you found some value, like, share, and subscribe, and comment below some of the thoughts and ideas that resonated with you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful